I'm Jaskiran Arora, and it's my pleasure and honor to be with a person who is a seasoned academician, a prolific writer and a reader, and an institutional builder. Professor Shyam Menon, the Vice Chancellor, BML Munjal University. Sir, it's my pleasure and honor to be with you today.
Thank you, Jaskiran. Pleasure is mine.
So, this conversation is woven around our way forward on a journey probably that will last for decades together. And there is this very beautiful model called airport model. So Professor Menon, if you were to leave all of us all with few of nuggets that you would want each one of us at BMU who would be here in the system 10, 20, 30 years from now to always be mindful of be cognizant of, what those jewels, 3 jewels would be.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, Jaskiran, because I feel that in our day-to-day struggle of meeting targets and accomplishing our chores within specific time frames, and amidst all these, we forget the long term often. I think it's important for us to remind ourselves constantly that we are in the business of building an institution which has a long-term impact. Universities are for hundreds of years. In fact, the best of universities in this world are those which have really served for several hundreds of years. So they have taken time to grow, they have taken time to establish themselves and to demonstrate an impact, a positive impact on whichever context in society they are set up. So it takes time. So it's a good idea for every teacher to ask this airport question to you in the forefront, that in 20 years time, 10 years time, if I were to meet one of my students, and what would I expect from that conversation, that encounter. I for one would actually would be of course happy with the kind of positions they hold and the successes they have made and so on and so forth. But more than anything else, I really feel will be quite heartened if I find in my student a certain amount of sense of fulfillment, a sense of satisfaction, and also a sense of generativity. That means an organically linked with everything around you and standing for something larger than oneself, and deriving happiness out of it, and deriving a sense of having arrived. We must also remember that much as we may attach a lot of passion to whatever we teach, whether it be mathematics or physics or mechanical engineering or economics or history, we must reconcile with the truth that the bulk of whatever we are going to transact in the classrooms are not going to be retained by them, are going to be forgotten by the students. But what would actually remain with them is actually how they felt about themselves, the extent of acceptance that they felt about themselves, the extent of acceptance they experienced in the university. So universities are in a way factories of memories, good memories and bad memories. And often these memories, universities and schools both, I mean childhood, school, universities, all of them, the formative years of one's life, the memories that one carries from that stand with you, with one, all one's life. And whenever there are difficult situations where one has to sort of face adverse conditions or make difficult decisions, some of these memories would come back to you. It would influence you, and the values that you choose to espouse are also willy-nilly, unconsciously influenced by the kind of early experiences that you had in schools, universities and so on. So, I think that is the long term impact that we make to individuals or groups of young people who pass through, transit through this space. So, that is what I consider most important. Of course, we can also talk in similar ways about our other contributions like research and new knowledge and new ideas and stuff like that, but this is fundamental in my opinion.
Very beautiful. So essentially, 20, 30 years from now, if any of the BMU family member was to meet another of us, students or us, we would always want those students to be people who believe in things greater than their individual self, and carrying that self-esteem that their voice matters, and in so doing, each of the enablers here on the campus and maybe beyond the campus that enable the students onto this journey, onto this belief, onto this faith. Beautiful. Thank you so very much, Professor Menon. The role of universities in a society, right? Imparting education, providing degrees, but you so often say that the role of universities in a society is way more than that. Could you please share more about this for our viewers? What do you think are the critical role to be played by a university in the society?
It's university in a very highly developed economy and society serves a certain purpose, and university in a developing context, a transforming context serves a very special purpose. I think we need to contextualize this question, and I would like to do that. In the present day India, for instance, what are universities serving? That's a question I think I would like to, I interpret your question as that. I look at it this way, that I think India has come through about 200 years of very difficult time. India used to have a good chunk of the world's GDP used to be in about 300, 400 years ago, 500 years ago. That was India was, and then through the colonial times, we depleted all that. Our wealth was extracted and taken away, and by colonizers. And in 1947, we actually came out impoverished, anemic, disheartened, etc. So we had extremes in terms of poverty and deprivation and so on, and we had a small elite, and this elite which used to really mediate between us and the colonizers. And higher education was a exclusive enterprise of this elite. Gradually we evolved from there. I think the past about 70-75 years we find higher education system has expanded considerably, and now it covers something like about a quarter of the age specific population of 17 to 23 age group. But even there we find that there are so much of variations even among them. There are higher education services or providers or higher education institutions are also extremely heterogeneous in terms of their location, their resources that they can command, and the kind of human resource that they have been able to bring there in terms of faculty and so on. It's very, very different. What we must remember is that be that what it may in terms of the heterogeneity within higher education, but universities as a whole in a country like India serves the purpose of trying to provide an opportunity for people to make those traverse that through a path of upward mobility from the margins to the core, both in terms of society and as well as economy. There is a core economy in which I think those who participate in the core economy, the expansion, the growth that they experience is much more, as we have seen, in comparison to those in the periphery. For instance, since the 1990s, we have seen our economy has grown, GDP has grown considerably. But those of them who are in the core of the economy had actually profited out of that much more than those who are in the periphery. Higher education is a critical bridge from the periphery to the core. So, universities today, even today in India, has a critical role to play to bridge this inequality to ensure that larger segments of the society essentially get to participate in the development of the society, and they themselves grow out of it and do not get alienated and marginalized further in this process. So, our the role we play in terms of create access structures, the role we play in terms of ensuring equity and inclusion in our what we do here to ensure that even within classrooms people are handheld and brought together and are discouraged from getting themselves marginalized and alienated. All these become part of our university's responsibility. Even in doing research, for instance, I think our research questions should mostly be addressed at the larger fundamental objective of giving voice to the voiceless, that those who can't work and inquire and find solutions to problems that they themselves face and live in, I think somebody else will have to do it for them. I think the university becomes therefore an institutionalized setup who has taken this as their responsibility to give voice to the concerns for those who do not have that voice, whether it be engineers working in areas like water management or things like those who work in hydrology, those who work in seismology, those who work in public health, those who work in education, primary education, those who work in gender disparity and reducing gender disparity, working on legal systems that would help people from the margins to come and seek justice. And all these become, in my opinion, very important objectives that the universities in India today have to really be focusing themselves on. In other words, what I am trying to say is that the university programs are best attuned to not merely to what is in demand in the market, but also what is of fundamental social need. There are aspects of social need which have not translated themselves into mobilized demand. It is well within the university's responsibility to identify areas of social need and then mobilize demand around it and create a supply of higher education services around those areas. So, in other words, if I may use an example, there may be much more immediate market demand for creating coders for the IT industry, but there may be less market demand for for those of them who are going to work as public health professionals who are working in epidemiological and public health areas in regions and sectors of India's of a country like India. So, but it's important for us to find a balance between these. I think it's not important for us to just not enough for us to cater to what is in demand just because it's marketable, but also to ensure that we create a supply where we think there should be a demand in future.
Wow, sure. This is very good. So these days, probably many a times the universities attempt to offer programs where there is market demand. But what I hear you say that there is a need for universities to offer programs where probably there is no demand, but there is a need. So probably the universities should be more committed to identifying the need and then maybe with patience waiting till maybe whenever the demand happens.
Or actively mobilize demand by creating, create a marketability for some of the area, some certain kinds of courses or programs which we are convinced are of absolute necessity for India's social transformation at this moment.
Through whatever happens in a university, it is very important to have students become Trojan horses who would get into the society and bring about the desired need-based ripples. So if you could just help us understand and see that more.
See, the thing is, we are among the top most economies. Our GDP is, is very high. But yet, I think when it comes to per capita GDP, we are very low because our population is large, and also those who hold, those who have access to the wealth of this country is actually only a few. The rest of them have no access. So those are because of structures of inequality which has already built into it. I mean, there are traditional structures like caste system and so on. There are new structures which the development process itself has created. So any kind of further development of a society like India would actually mean a lot of social change. So if you argue, if you then try to see the implications of what the university's role should be, we will realize that our graduates are not there just to be foot soldiers of the development process which are already on. They will just join the assembly line and do the repetitive work of strengthening structures which already exist. On the contrary, in addition to that, there will also be this critical role of changing structures, transforming structures, working towards ameliorating ourselves from the negative effects of certain traditional systems which are in our society. The structures of inequality particularly. So our graduates will have to go out and work towards the change of this. That's why I really feel that our students should be like Trojan horses. We send them into existing institutions not with the idea merely of strengthening them. If there are contradictions within those institutions, whether it be industry or whether it be NGOs or when there be other kinds of institutions, we need to create an energy for transforming them from within. So that's what I think our graduates should also be equipped to do. That's the Trojan horse metaphor. That's how I've understood the Trojan horse metaphor. I dream of a day when a young person, his or her aspiration would be in terms of not acquiring more and more material acquisitions for himself or herself, but in terms of inducing a set of initiatives in the ecosystem in which that person operates, in which everybody thrives out of it, everybody gains out of it. What is the purpose of my becoming extremely prosperous when I am surrounded by people who are in deep deprivation? So a time will come when people realize that my success also means the success of others. It's not a zero-sum game. If I have to succeed, somebody else has to fail. That is a zero-sum game. And instead, I think we will begin to understand that success is something which has to be understood as something which one will do jointly together, so that everybody gains out of it. There is prosperity for everybody. There is welfare for everybody. There is health for everybody. There is happiness for everybody. There is love for everybody. Saying that is the kind of world which I really dream our graduates will be the creators of.